equality, the rights and the empowerment of all women and girls globally. The CSW 70 Bureau is proud to lead the first session guided by the revitalization process. Important new elements will be piloted during this session. In particular, the Ministerial Roundtable dedicated to the session's focus area on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of older women, which will take place on Wednesday, 11th March, and the high-level meeting on violence against women and girls, which will take place on Thursday, 12th March. And as always, we have a rich program of side events and parallel events organized by member states, UN entities, and civil society organizations. Excellencies, colleagues, my dear friends, at a time when the world is facing multiple crises, and as important discussions continue on the reform and restructuring of the United Nations, Costa Rica and I personally are deeply proud to have had the honor of chairing this commission, and to once again help build a broad consensus in advancing gender equality and the rights and empowerment of women and girls. The path has never been easy for women and girls, and this moment is no exception. Yet your presence here today sends a powerful message that our collective resolve remains strong, that progress will not be reversed, and that the Commission on the Status of Women continues to be a vital platform for advancing equality, justice, and dignity for women and girls everywhere. The time to honor that commitment is now. We owe it to the trailblazers who chartered the path for us and to those who shall follow in our steps. To our mothers, grandmothers, daughters, and sisters, let us therefore leave this room with renewed determination to turn our commitments into action and to ensure that the promises we make here translate into real change in the lives of women and girls around the world. I thank you. I now invite the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to deliver a statement. Mr. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends, I am so pleased to be in a room full of leaders who refuse to accept inequality as inevitable. For 70 years, the Commission on the Status of Women has been a meeting ground of frontline defenders, a wellspring of conviction, passion, and energy, and a global platform for truth-telling. So let me begin with an often unspoken but age-old truth. We still live in a male-dominated world and a male-dominated culture. Gender equality is, and always has been, a question of power. Not a single step forward for women's rights has ever been given. It has been won. Won by generations of women and girls, advocates and activists, community leaders, and justice seekers. Won by you. And so before anything else, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being the conscience and catalyst for a better world, for women, for girls, and for all of humanity. Excellencies, dear friends, This year's theme cuts to the heart of the struggle for equality, access to justice. Here we are, well into the 21st century, yet justice remains a distant dream for millions upon millions of women and girls. Discriminatory laws persist. Patriarchal norms endure. Around the globe, women hold only 64% of the legal rights enjoyed by men. This gap is structural, not accidental, and it limits opportunity across societies. We are a world strained by conflict, climate chaos, widening inequalities, and technological upheaval. And in this turbulent world, the pushback on women's rights is in overdrive. Let's be clear. Backlash is what entrenched power does when it feels its grip loosening. And the evidence is all around us. Hard-won legal protections are being eroded. Women human rights defenders are under attack. Sexual and reproductive health and rights are being undermined. At the same time, at the moment when the Middle East and other parts of the world are engulfed in conflict, we know that women and children are bearing the brunt of violence and displacement. The number of women and girls living within 50 kilometers of a deadly conflict is at its highest in decades. Conflict-related sexual violence has surged by 87% in just 2 years. And yet, despite the troubling trends and pressures, women's movements are persisting, driving reforms, defending communities, shaping societies. More than 40 countries have amended constitutions to advance women's rights. 90% have strengthened laws against violence. And the world is changing because women are changing it. But we have barriers to overcome and gaps to fill: opportunity gaps, implementation gaps, and justice gaps. And that brings me to my core message. Justice for women and girls must be a cornerstone of the world we seek to build. Equality is the bedrock of progress, as affirmed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the Beijing +30 Plan of Action. Let me highlight 4 front lines for justice. First, justice in the engine for sustainable development. When women and girls can claim their rights to inherit property, to fair work, to legal identity, to land, entire societies move forward. But when justice systems fail, women inequality hardens into poverty and development stalls before it can begin. And this is a global challenge. Yet, the situation in Afghanistan stands out. Women are being systematically erased from public life and now even prevented from entering UN compounds. This is injustice in practice, undermining development today and closing off the future for all Afghans. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals means achieving equal access to justice for everyone, everywhere. Second, justice in the foundation of peace and security. When women participate meaningfully in peace processes and transitional justice, agreements last longer and societies heal more deeply. But the world continues to fall short. Inclusion is proclaimed, yet women are absent from negotiating tables. Protection is pledged, yet sexual violence persists with impunity. Leadership is invoked, yet women peace builders are underfunded, under threat, and under-recognized. In conflict zones, the absence of justice becomes another form of violence. Impunity fuels brutality, and survivors remain unheard, communities fracture, and cycles of abuse deepen. Ensuring access to justice, even in the midst of crises, is essential to breaking those cycles. Third, justice in the guardian of human rights and human dignity. when a woman's testimony is dismissed, when a girl is denied her day in court, when laws discriminate or police fail to act, human rights erode for everyone. And justice also means confronting the epidemic of violence against women and girls in all its forms. Domestic abuse, trafficking, sexual violence in conflict, and the harassment that limits women's freedom every single day. These crimes permeate every level of societies. And as we sadly see, the exploitation of women and girls can reach the highest halls of influence, sustained by a toxic convergence of money, patriarchy, and impunity. This must end. We cannot and must not look away. Fourth, justice is essential to a safe and inclusive digital future. If gender equality is a question of power, then we must look at one of the most powerful industries on earth, technology, and increasingly artificial intelligence. Patriarchy still casts a long shadow in the Silicon Valleys of the world, embedding the hierarchies of the past into the infrastructure of the future. Just 1 in 4 tech workers is a woman. And when women are absent from the design of digital systems, male chauvinism fills the gap. Algorithms that hardware discrimination. Online platforms that are megaphones for misogyny. And artificial intelligence that reinforces inequality instead of correcting it. Technology companies must take responsibility, and all of us must work to close the digital gender divide. As an engineer, I want to emphasize this must include expanding opportunities for girls and women in science and technology. Fifth, justice is essential for climate action. Women and girls, especially in rural and marginalized communities, bear the brunt of climate devastation. When laws deny women equal rights to land, water, resources, and environmental decision-making, climate resilience collapses. But when women lead, when they help design adaptation strategies, safeguard ecosystems, and shape climate policy, responses become more just and more effective. Climate justice and gender justice go hand in hand. Chers amis,
dear friends, excellencies, across every front line for justice, success depends on women in leadership. From my first day in office, I made gender parity a priority. For the first time in UN history, women now make up fully half of the UN's workforce across professional and higher categories. And for the first time, we reached parity in senior leadership. We did so 2 years ahead of schedule, but I also recognize it was 80 years late. How did we finally do it? Not by lowering standards, but by widening the search for talent. Not by compromising merit, but by recognizing it everywhere it exists. Our Gender Equality Acceleration Plan continues this work, coordinating action across dozens of entities to deliver real change in the lives of women and girls. We have put forward a proposal for a stronger, more unified vehicle to deliver for women, girls, and young people everywhere by bringing together the strength of UNFPA and UN Women to increase impact, reach, and leave no one behind. And we are also all benefiting from efforts to revitalize this commission as called for in the Pact for the Future. Processes have been streamlined, results have been placed at the center, and dozens of partners are taking part despite the obstacles we know so well. We must keep going, inside and outside these walls. We need every voice, every idea, every ounce of leadership from the world's women and girls. And men and boys must also play their full part, standing in solidarity for equality.
Excellencies, dear friends, allow me one final point of personal privilege. After nearly a decade as Secretary General, this is my final time addressing the opening of the Commission on the Status of Women. Let me be clear, this is not a farewell. I look forward to working with you through the entire year and far beyond, wherever I'll be. But I want you to know what I have seen. I've seen women around the world standing strong in the rubble of earthquakes and in the ashes of war, in refugee camps and rural villages, in parliaments and in protests. I've heard you demand accountability in the face of impunity. I've seen you in action, lifting countless lives. I've watched you build movements that have reshaped the world, and I'm profoundly honored to be your ally in the struggle. You can keep counting on me every step of the way, for equality, for dignity, for justice, for every woman and girl, and I thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. I now invite the President of the Economic and Social Council, His Excellency Locke Tapa, to deliver a statement.
Madam Chair, Secretary General, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to join you at the opening of the 70th sessions of the Commissions on the Status of Women. Together with so many champions of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Excellencies, for nearly 8 decades, this Commission has helped shape the global commitments that guide our shared pursuit of equality. From the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action to the gender-responsive implementations of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. 8. Today we must confront a difficult truth. Progress towards gender equality remains far too slow. Women globally still enjoy only about 2/3 of the legal rights available to men. And even where laws exist, many women and girls still struggle to access justice because institutions are under-resourced, because procedures are complex, or because rights are simply not known. This reminds us of a fundamental truth. Equality is not achieved simply by adopting laws alone. It is achieved when justice systems work in practice. For every woman and every girl. This is why the year's priority theme is so important. Ensuring access to justice for all women and girls is fundamental to human rights. It protects dignity, it expands opportunity, it strengthens accountability. When justice systems are inclusive and responsive, women and girls can claim their rights and participate fully in society and unlock the full potential of the entire communities. This progress moves us closer to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, leaving no one behind. And it lays the foundation for a more just, equitable, and peaceful world. Excellencies, the work of this Commission is integral to the mandate of the Economic and Social Council. As a subsidiary body of the Council, the Commission brings together government, civil society, and the United Nations systems to advance gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. The ECOSOC serves as the United Nations central platform for coordinating the work of the UN development systems and advancing sustainable development. At the heart of this effort is the high-level political forum on sustainable development, where member states review progress and accelerate actions toward the sustainable development goals. The outcome of this session will inform the 2026 high-level political forum, and they will shape the path toward the 2027 SDG Summit. The guidance and commitments emerging from these commissions are therefore essential to Council's work. They help ensure that gender equality remains at the heart of the global development agenda. This session also marks an important moment for the Commission itself. Following commitments made by the member states in the Pact of the Future, ECOSOC adopted a resolution to revitalize the commissions on the status of women. The 70th session is the first to take place following that decision. Through this revitalization process, member states reaffirm the central role of the commissions on the status of women in advancing gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. The goal is clear: to strengthen the Commission's effectiveness, its inclusivity, and its impact. The lessons from these renewed commissions can also help inform the broader General Assembly review of the ECOSOC and HLPF as we strengthen the multilateral systems to deliver on the sustainable development goals. Excellencies, as President of the Economic and Social Council, I reaffirm the Council's strong commitment to advancing gender equality and ensuring that a gender perspective is fully integrated across our work. Coming from Nepal, a country of diverse communities and resilient women, I am reminded that progress towards equality is driven not only by global commitments, but by determinations of women and girls in communities everywhere. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, let this session send a clear message. Equality must be lived, protected, and delivered through laws that uphold rights, through institutions that ensure justice, and through systems that leave no one behind. Justice must be accessible to every woman and every girl, no matter where she lives or whatever her circumstances might be. Without justice, rights remain abstract and dignity and opportunity remain unfulfilled. Finally, gender equality must remain at the heart of our shared efforts to achieve the SDGs. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I wish you productive and deliberations and a successful sessions of this commission. Thank you so much.
I thank the President of the Economic and Social Council. I now invite the President of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, to deliver a statement.
Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished guests. After 70 sessions of this Commission on the Status of Women and 30 years since the Beijing Declaration, we no longer need to debate why women's rights matter. The facts are clear. The real question is, why are we still not delivering? It's not that we don't know better. The answer is that inequality is an active choice. Rollbacks on equal rights are an active choice. And that is why the theme of this year's CSW, Justice, could not be more timely. The struggle for women's rights is fundamentally a struggle for justice itself. Justice in principle, what our laws say, justice in practice and action, how those laws are implemented, and justice in power, meaning who holds it. Globally, women have only 2/3 of the legal rights afforded to men. 54% of countries lack consent-based legal definitions of rape. 72% allow child's, so de facto girls' marriage. 44% do not mandate equal pay for equal work. These are not oversights, but deliberate choices. Choices that violate the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and 70 years of commitments made in this Commission. The most extreme example is in Afghanistan, as we have heard so clearly again this morning. There, women are not only erased from public life, they are literally prisoners in their own homes. So we have to be clear. Any normalization with this, what some call gender apartheid regime, would be also an active choice to tolerate the most severe women's rights violations. Yet, the opposite is also true, and it lies in your hands every day to take an active choice to speak up and to advance equality. Over the past decades, more than 40 countries have amended their constitutions to advance women's rights. For example, closing legal loopholes that allow child marriage or defining femicide as a crime punishable by life imprisonment. Progress is not impossible. It is a political choice. It is active leadership. It is justice in practice. Which brings me to my second point: laws on paper are not enough. Most starkly, despite increasing legislation, still 1/3 of all women worldwide have endured physical or sexual violence. And technology is accelerating abuse. An estimated 96% of deepfake videos online are non-consensual sexual content portraying especially women. This is again no coincidence. These systems are set up to silence, humiliate, and control women. Again, this is about power. So the decisions we make about regulating these technologies are active political choices to break this power which is used to silence and humiliate women or not. Inaction is a choice to not protect women, but action is also a choice. And I'm proud that here at the United Nations, we, you, the member states, took this active choice for protecting women by establishing a new scientific panel on AI governance, also with equal representation of women. Because justice in practice will never be delivered without justice in power. My third point. Representation shapes priorities, interpretation of law, and outcomes. If we do not address the fact that 3/4 of parliamentarians worldwide are men and 103 countries have never had a female head of state, then we will hardly deliver on justice in principles or justice in practice. This reality also applies to this institution. Madam Chair has been the first female chair of the first committee. I'm only the 5th female president of the General Assembly. And currently, less than 1/3 of permanent representatives are women. And in 80 years, a woman has never been Secretary General. Again, this is an active choice. an active choice by you, representatives of every member state. And the question is not why a woman should be Secretary General, but I would say why not after 80 years. Justice and power Justice and power also requires confronting those that abuse their power and the systems that allow it to persist. And here we cannot ignore the millions of files now disclosed for the whole world to see, so staying silent would mean complicity. Because no power and no money in the world makes the systematic abuse of women, a system of sexual slavery and child abuse, just a pile of files or a lesser crime. Justice around the world demands the active choice to believe survivors everywhere around the world, to hold perpetrators accountable every day, and dismantle systems that perpetuate abuse and discrimination. Because this is what true justice is. Justice not only in words, justice not only on the International Women's Day, but in principle, in practice, and in power, every day. And in this regard, I would like to encourage you, especially today, right after the International Women's Day and the opening of CSW 70, to join hands and take an active choice, an active decision to support women and girls all around the world with the final outcome and the agreed conclusions of this CSW 70, because women and girls are watching you, they are watching us. I thank you.
I thank the President of the General Assembly. I now invite the civil society representative, Ms. Eunice Musime, to make a statement.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, sisters and brothers, it gives me great honor to speak at this auspicious occasion at the opening of the CSW. In Africa, we say, until the lioness tells her story, the tale of the hunted will always glorify the hunter. Today, as global citizens, and their organizations, we are here to tell our story and to demand that justice be written in our names, not erased from our lives. I speak with the voices of the world's citizens from villages and cities, from conflict zones and classrooms, from ancestral lands and digital spaces. We carry the collective power of women in all their diversities: mothers, daughters, activists, feminists, leaders. We carry fire, we carry care, we carry courage, and we demand action. Our reality is not different. A lot of the reality has already been spoken about. Yet for women and girls, justice is still a broken promise. The courts are too far. In many rural areas, women will walk 200 kilometers to reach a police station. Justice cannot be a privilege of geography. The laws are too weak. Patriarchal and plural legal systems still treat women as minors, denying them inheritance, property, and dignity. Poverty has been weaponized. Transport costs, legal fees, and unsafe environments force women to withdraw cases. Economic exclusion is systemic, and it is systemic violence. Conflict and war. Rape is used deliberately as a weapon of war. Justice systems collapse precisely where women need them the most. Digital violence. Girls are harassed, their images stolen, their voices erased online. Yet national systems remain blind to this new frontier of violence. Backlash. Anti-gender ideologies, shrinking civic space, and criminalization of women human rights defenders are surging. The fire of women's resistance is being targeted, but it will not be extinguished. So our demands to your excellencies, delegates of this commission, we know that member states can take the steps to harmonize laws, end child marriage, FGM, marital rape, and all forms of gender-based violence. We know that you can expand access, fund decentralized justice services, legal aid systems, and digital forensic capacity. We know that you as member states can also address economic barriers. We call upon the global north to cancel debt, to pay reparations, to restructure the global economic systems, redistribute resources, and deconstruct exorbitant privilege that some states continue to enjoy. We know that you can ensure representation. We know that you can move beyond tokenism. We know that the next first female UN Secretary General is going to be elected. And we know that we are going to have more and more women in high-level positions. We also know that you can choose to fund feminist priorities and movements. We know that you can allocate gender-responsive budgets. You can ensure progressive tax systems. We know that you can tax the rich. And we know that you can stem the surge of corporates and multinationals that are fueling injustice. And we also know that as you reform the UN, we hope that that will not sideline the UN women, the one that has been our hope and aspiration as global women citizens. Therefore, in my closing demand, for us, CSW is not another meeting. It's a test of political will, and member states must decide. Will justice remain words on paper, or it will become the lived reality of every woman and girl? And as I close, I want to acknowledge all the women and girls that could not be physically here because of visa exclusions, because of war and conflict, because their countries are not allowing them to live. So all those women and girls that could not be here, I bring their voices. We, the women of the world, demand action. Justice delayed is justice denied, and justice denied is dignity stolen. We will not accept stolen dignity. Thank you for listening to me.
I thank the representative of civil society. I now invite the youth representative, Ms. Ludwika Fuentes, to deliver a statement.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, colegas y amigas. Colleagues and friends from civil society, my name is Luisa Fuentes. I'm a lawyer and a survivor of gender-based violence in academia. Throughout my academic life, I faced political persecution, threats against my integrity, and sexual harassment, all protected by institutional prestige. Complaints or filing complaints was practically impossible because in my country, Ecuador, as in most of Latin America, this kind of violence is not codified into law. Although 1 out of every 3 women has experienced it, this should not happen. Global rhetoric affirms that we have a right to education, but who takes care of us when we go to school? Who can say how many women have had to leave school or university due to violence? For instance, who explains to the mothers of the Iranian girls that were assassinated at school that they're not coming back home? Or girls who were raped in Peru? Who takes care of their lives? No one. Because no one wants to admit that naming rights is insufficient when there are no mechanisms to safeguard them. All of our rights have been acquired over the bodies of our dead. We've had to prove with blood that violence is real in order to be heard. And this is an unequivocal piece of evidence that our legal systems are obsolete. The law has never been neutral. It was built throughout centuries at tables where women did not have a seat. And today, they use debates that question whether we are telling the truth when we file reports or whether we should have autonomy over our own bodies. Nevertheless, barriers to access justice do not just exist in the law, but in the lack of legal institutions in rural communities, in the criminalization of poverty, in the lack of language justice, the elitism of information. In many parts of the world, justice is a faraway notion, but in Latin America, it is also dangerous. Speaking out can mean facing networks of political, economic, or criminal power. Nevertheless, we continue to speak out. This is why it is important to tell you that women that expose themselves to public scrutiny, social humiliation, and persecution do so each time they speak out against violence. So our legal systems should just simply believe us. That would be a good starting point. I know that this is a complex moment to talk about justice with a gender perspective. This is why we need your bravery to be on the right side of history, a history where trans women do not have to fight against legal systems to have the right to their own identity, where deaf women have interpreters, and where the deaths of indigenous women defending their territory do not go unpunished. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders of the world, do not allow for your legacy to be legislating for the most powerful, colonizing the bodies of women and silencing their lives, helping hide those who have twisted the rule of law in their favor. For us, young women, we have inherited the struggle of our grandmothers, and we are committed to putting a stop to this for the next generation. But it has been 70 years since the first session of the Committee on the Status of Women, and we are those that put our bodies on the line, on the street, in order to avoid a rollback of our rights. That is why I am saying that the rights of women cannot be conquered over the lives of other women, especially at a moment where the reduction of civic space, persecution of activists, and the dismantling of institutions is a clear force. It's clear proof that we are being erased. Our legal system should be capable of recognizing and overcoming the biases of a patriarchal society. We should have permanent and mandatory training for police, judges, and lawyers when it comes to gender perspective. We need safe shelters, psychological support, free legal assistance for victims of violence, legal data with gender perspective, and effective participation at national and international negotiating tables. Women's organizations are a transformative factor to reduce gender-based violence, and this is why flexible financing is important, and we must staunchly support community organizations led by young people. This is not the time to be tepid. There is no space for political positions that are not radically in favor of justice, gender-based justice. We must tell it like it is. Girls are not mothers. Abortion is a public health issue. There is no climate justice without gender justice. There is no social justice without redistributing care work. And there are no conversations about us without us. A life free of violence is possible if we reform our justice system based on a gender perspective that reflects all of our voices. Thank you.
I thank the youth representative. At this juncture, the Secretary General has to take his leave for other commitments. On behalf of the Commission, I would like to thank the Secretary General for being with us this morning. Thank you. I now invite the Commission to consider a number of organizational and procedural matters. I first invite the Commission to consider Agenda Item 1, Election of Officers. The Commission will recall that at the first meeting of its 70th session on 21st March 2025, the Commission elected me as chair and Ms. Flavia Umalisa of Rwanda and Ms. Sama Dubuk of Lebanon as vice chairs of the 70th session of the Commission. At the same meeting, the Commission elected Ms. Andrea Macanu of Romania and Mr. Noah Oeri of Liechtenstein as vice chairs of the Commission at its 70th and 71st sessions. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow Bureau members for their hard work and excellent support throughout the preparations for the current session. I would like to inform the Commission that the Bureau has decided to recommend that Ms. Sama Dubuk of Lebanon should serve as the rapporteur of the Commission for the 70th session. May I take it that the Commission wishes to appoint Ms. Sama Dubuk of Lebanon to serve as vice chair cum rapporteur of the 70th session of the Commission? I hear no objection. It is so decided. I congratulate Ms. Dubuk on her appointment. I now invite the Commission to appoint members of the Working Group on Communications on the Status of Women in accordance with the provisions of ECOSOC Resolution 1983/27. The Commission may wish to recall that at the first meeting of the 70th session on 21st March 2025, the Commission appointed Ukraine to serve as a member of the Working Group on Communications on the Status of Women at its 70th. The Commission may further recall that at the same meeting, the Commission postponed the election of the members of the Working Group from the African states, the Asia-Pacific states, the Latin American and Caribbean states, and the Western European and other states to a later date. I have been informed of the following candidatures. The Group of African States has endorsed the candidature of South Africa to serve as a member of the Working Group at its 70th session. Chile has been nominated from among the Group of Latin American and Caribbean States to serve as a member of the Working Group at its 70th session, and the Group of Western European and other states has endorsed the candidature of Spain to serve as a member of the Working Group at its 70th and 71st sessions. May I take it that the Commission wishes to appoint South Africa and Chile to serve on the Working Group on Communications on the Status of Women at the Commission's 70th session, and to appoint Spain to serve on the Working Group on Communications on the Status of Women at the Commission's 70th and 71st sessions. I hear no objection. It is so decided. The Commission will postpone the election of the members of the Working Group on Communication at its 70th session from among the Group of Asia-Pacific states. I now invite the Commission to turn its attention to Agenda Item 1, Adoption of the Agenda and Other Organizational Matters. The Commission will first consider its provisional agenda for the session as contained in document E/CN6/2026/1. The provisional agenda and documentation for the 70th session were approved by the Economic and Social Council in its decision 2025/311. Are there any comments on the provisional agenda? May I take it that the Commission wishes to adopt the provisional agenda as contained in document E/CN6/2026/1? I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now invite the Commission to turn to its proposed organizational work as contained in document E/CN6/2026/1, Addendum 1. In line with ECOSOC Resolution 2022/4, and following the decision by the Bureau, I would like to propose the following time limits for statements in the general discussion. Statements on behalf of groups shall not exceed 6 minutes. Statements by individual delegations should not exceed 4 minutes. And statements by intergovernmental organizations, entities of the United Nations system, and non-governmental organizations shall not exceed 3 minutes. As regards to the ministerial roundtables, the high-level meeting, and interactive dialogues, delegations are advised that a statement should not exceed 3 minutes. If the speakers continue beyond the time limit, the microphone will be automatically muted. May I take it that the Commission wishes to approve the draft organizational work as contained in document E/CN6/2026/1/@1, on the understanding that further adjustments may be made as warranted during the course of the session? I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now invite the Commission to begin its consideration of Agenda Item 3, follow-up to the 4th World Conference on Women and the 23rd Special Session of the General Assembly, entitled Women 2000, Gender Equality, Development and Peace for the 21st Century. The documentation under this item is listed on iGov. I now invite the Executive Director of UN Women, Ms. Zima Basus, to make a statement and introduce the reports of the Secretary General under Agenda Item 3.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, Antonio Gutierrez, Secretary General, Your Excellency Annalena Baerbock, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency Ambassador Loh Bahadur Thapa, President of ECOSOC, Your Excellency Chair of the 70th Commission on the Status of Women, Ambassador Maritza Chan Valverde, Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, civil society representatives, feminists, dear friends. This Commission on the Status of Women is a beacon of multilateralism at a time when the world needs multilateralism most. This Commission offers the promise of gender equality and women's rights, that great, undisputable accelerator of the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. It has, for 70 years, steered us onto a shared path of concrete change to surmount the challenges of inequalities, violence against women, conflicts, new technologies, climate change, food insecurity, financing, democratic erosion, and more. My hope is that this year will be no different. Excellencies, we meet at a time of multiple global crises. Peace eludes us, and the world is extremely and increasingly fragmented. and gender inequality is compounded by the evils of war and conflict. From Afghanistan to Haiti to Iran, Myanmar, Palestine, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Yemen, and beyond. I echo all the pleas for a return to diplomacy, to dialogue, for an end to the killing across the Middle East, Africa, and beyond. For those observing, I wish for this holy month of Ramadan to bring relief and peace. Excellencies, the dividends of women's leadership, their role in global, national, and local economies, their contributions to their societies, to science, to culture, to politics, are immeasurable, but they cannot be realized when justice systems are unjust. Today, in 2026, no country in the world has achieved full legal equality. This year's priority theme, access to justice for women and girls, could not be more timely or critical. The theme, at its heart, is the woman who continues to live with her abusive partner, having despaired of help from the justice system. It is the girl who is killed or raped or injured in war because the perpetrators are unrestrained in their impunity. It is the woman whose very potential is diminished because laws on work deny her rights and the chance for equal pay. It is the girl denied nationality under discriminatory laws. Excellencies, friends, the Secretary General's report invites us to imagine two roads. One represents the needs of women and girls, the other, the justice system. One, the reality of half of humanity, and the other, the remedies available to them. When these roads intersect, they can drive profound change. For example, since 1970, more than 600 million women have gained access to economic opportunities because of reforms of family laws. When these roads diverge, so much is lost. Globally, women have only 64% of the legal rights of men. No country, not one, has achieved, as I mentioned, full legal equality. In fact, it may take us 286 years to eliminate and close legal protection gaps for women and girls. In nearly 70% of surveyed countries, women face greater barriers to justice than men, barriers often rooted in their everyday realities: cost, distance, mistrust in justice institutions. In 54% of countries, rape is still not defined on the basis of consent. In 75% of countries, a girl can still be forced to marry. And in 44% of countries, the law does not mandate equal remuneration for work of equal value. As always, this is far too often compounded by intersecting forms of discrimination. Excellencies, justice systems can be invaluable, offering proximity, familiarity, and affordability. But they are no less prone to discriminatory norms and practices that violate human rights. Like the formal justice system, they too can serve as either pathways or fences to justice. When women and girls are denied justice, the damage goes far beyond any single case. It impacts the very fabric of our societies and good governance. Public trust erodes, institutions lose legitimacy, and the rule of law itself is weakened. A justice system that fails half the population cannot claim to uphold justice at all. The justice women and girls deserve, that is theirs by right, cannot wait. We must collectively pursue it, here at the United Nations, in our national laws and policies, in your courtrooms and traditional justice mechanisms. In doing so, we must engage all of society, including men and boys and young people, to contribute to our collective effort for equality. That is why, at the CSW, UN Women calls for 5 concrete, clear, undeniable deliverables that we believe offer a way forward based on the Secretary General's report. First, justice systems that are fair, functional, funded, and coherent, which both live up to and underpin a culture of human rights in line with international human rights standards. Second, justice services that are gender-responsive, survivor-centered, and designed to meet the needs of women and girls, that are well-funded and accessible, and that work. Third, justice for all through legal aid that is available for free, always, everywhere, and for everyone. Justice that depends on one's ability to pay is no justice at all. Fourth, funding and support for those women's organizations who buttress justice and rights every day. Their essential work to make justice a lived reality every day deserves more recognition and is crucial to achieving equality for women and girls. And fifth, leveraging technology and data. We must let innovation accelerate the delivery of justice for women and girls while avoiding its pitfalls. And we must afford ourselves the evidence-based our efforts need so that we invest our precious resources where they have the most impact. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, CSW is about solutions. But more than that, it is about the political will for these solutions to be implemented. The Secretary General's report, as always, makes clear what needs to be done. It lies with you to decide how to seize the opportunity they represent. I applaud the delegations who have been working tirelessly to reach agreed conclusions at the CSW. Conclusions that are focused, that seek to advance access to justice for women and girls, that seek to end impunity, that seek to create justice systems that work for everyone equally. And I remain hopeful that the outcomes of your discussions will result in agreed conclusions adopted. In doing so, showing the world, yet again, what this Commission can achieve with our multilateral system and how and what our multilateral system can deliver for women and girls. Excellencies, member states and partners assembled here represent the most powerful of constituencies. That power is more than sufficient to make a difference, more than sufficient to transform lives, and to do so and through partnerships. The commitments of CEDAW, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the ICPD, and the 2030 Agenda are unambiguous, clear in the promises they make and by which we are bound. It is our task, our responsibility to make them real. The women and girls of the world look to us to keep those promises. That is their right, and that is our duty. Excellencies, in conclusion, there is nothing more foundational for the equality towards which we strive than justice, nothing more essential for rights and freedoms for all women and girls, nothing more crucial for development and prosperity. UN Women remains your unwavering ally in achieving justice for all women and girls. And Excellencies, if I may, soon this year, you, member states, will be electing a new Secretary General, a new leadership. And I know that myself and my team at UN Women, and hopefully also many of you here, would be proud to serve and work with a Madam Secretary General. Thank you. Thank you.
I thank the Executive Director of UN Women. I now invite the Chair of the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, Ms. Nalia Haidar to introduce the report of the committee.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today is the second and final time that I have the honor to address this forum in my capacity as chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. As we mark International Women's Day and the 45th anniversary of the entry into force of the CEDAW Convention, the brainchild of CSW, this International Bill of Women's Rights, ratified by 189 states, remains as relevant and as necessary as ever. Across the globe, we are witnessing a convergence of crises, wars waged, armed conflicts, rise of autocratic regimes, deepening economic inequalities, and a climate emergency that has brought humanity to a tipping point. And the consequences of these crises are disproportionately borne by women and girls. At the same time, we are witnessing a well-orchestrated backlash against gender equality across regions, the erosion of sexual and reproductive health rights, shrinking civic space, attacks on women human rights defenders, and rising level of gender-based violence, both offline and online. In the face of these challenges, the CEDAW Convention remains the core legal framework for holding governments accountable for the equal rights of women and girls. For more than 4 decades, the CEDAW Committee has helped transform global standards. It helped shift the understanding of gender-based violence from a private matter to a clear human rights violation. And it has insisted that women must not simply be present in decision-making, they must participate equally, 50-50. But today, the committee itself faces unprecedented constraints. Last year, almost 1/3 of our meeting time was lost due to the liquidity crisis. State party reviews were canceled, fewer individual complaints could be examined, and fewer inquiries could be conducted. And yet, despite these constraints, the committee has continued its work with determination. Over the past year, we held dialogues with 15 state parties in Geneva and conducted a Pacific Sub-Regional Technical Cooperation session in Suva, Fiji. Under the optional protocol, the committee also examined individual complaints, and in 6 cases we found violations of the convention, including failures to prevent a femicide, failures to provide reparation for sexual violence against a girl with disability, and the forcible returns of victims of gender-based violence to third states. Even under severe resource constraints, the committee continues to address some of our most severe pressing human rights challenges, and thanks to the commitment of its members. At our 91st session in June 2025, the committee became the first UN human rights treaty body to review Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover. And what we documented was nothing short of a coordinated and institutionalized system of gender persecution, one that may well amount to gender apartheid, as we heard this morning. This is a stark reminder. Women's rights are never permanently secured. They must be defended constantly and collectively. Last month, we adopted an addendum updating our landmark general recommendation on women, peace, and security. It addresses emerging challenges such as conflict-related sexual violence, survivor-centered justice, the impact of armed transfer, AI-facilitated gender-based violence, and at the same time, we are advancing work on a new general recommendation on gender stereotype, one of the root causes of discrimination against women worldwide. Yet, our ability to carry our mandate is increasingly under strain. Human rights treaty bodies are among the most cost-effective mechanisms in the entire UN human rights system, and yet they are currently being weakened by chronic underfunding. CEDAW, therefore, echoes the Secretary General calls on member states to honor their financial commitment and to take urgent measures to bridge the current financial gap. At a time when gender equality is under attack, this is not the moment to weaken the institution designed to protect women's and girls' rights. At a time of backlash, we must not stand back. At a time of crisis, we must not retreat from our commitments. Women's rights are human rights. They are not optional. They are a core obligation under international law, and it's our shared responsibility to uphold them everywhere. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the chair of CEDAW. I now invite the chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls, Ms. Claudia Flores, to make a statement.
Madam Chair, Señora Presidente, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and participants. I am honored to address the Commission on the Status of Women as Chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Madam Chair, today we are entrusted with setting the tone for dialogue between member states, civil society, and the United Nations on the state of human rights of women and girls during this 70th session. This commission has long served as a forum where the international community takes stock of progress and confronts the challenges that remain. At a time of profound global uncertainty, women and girls across the world are looking to the international community for leadership and meaningful partnership. Yet we know that what we declare in this room is only the first step. The true measure of our commitments is whether they lead to tangible improvements and to lives of human dignity for women and girls. Across regions, the Working Group increasingly hears a shared concern from our civil society partners: frustration. Frustration not only with the continued lack of implementation of agreed commitments, but also with the persistent gap between what many have termed feminist expectations and our actual institutional offerings. This observation has been sobering for us, but we also know that we have the knowledge, the tools, and the experience needed to move forward. The task before us is to translate that knowledge into action. And we also know what works: laws grounded in substantive gender equality, policies that transform harmful norms and stereotypes, adequate resources for programs and services, and strong monitoring to ensure effective implementation. All of this together with the meaningful participation of women and girls. Around the world, women and girls are already shaping this change through leadership, resilience, and innovation in their communities, in institutions, and across our global community. Our task is to ensure that everywhere they have the power, resources, and opportunities to lead and collaborate in building societies grounded in human dignity for all. This work also requires the engagement of men and boys as partners in advancing equality and transforming the norms and structures that sustain discrimination. Over the past year, the Working Group has continued dialogue with women and girls across regions, elevating these perspectives in international forums, strengthening our work on cases of discrimination, and advancing a multi-sectoral approach to inequality. Our most recent thematic report examines the gender dimensions of care and support systems and highlights the direct connection between rights in the care sector and access to justice. Existing care and support systems often create structural barriers to claiming rights and accessing remedies. Disproportionate care responsibilities generate time poverty and economic dependence, limiting the ability to seek legal assistance, report violence, pursue labor claims, or participate in judicial proceedings. When the costs of claiming rights are incompatible with caregiving realities, justice is not accessible in practice, even when equality may exist on paper. These findings reinforce a core principle of substantive gender equality. Advancing women's rights requires addressing the structural conditions that shape our everyday lives. To support this work, we have recently issued 2 guidance documents I'd like to share with you, one on substantive gender equality and one on the rights of women and girls in family life. Through these, we offer a practical framework, our CREATE framework, to support states and other actors in achieving measurable progress on gender equality across all sectors, while promoting inclusive and rights-based approaches to family life. Looking ahead, our forthcoming annual thematic report focuses on women and girls' rights in the context of digital technologies and artificial intelligence, an area that increasingly illustrates the gap between regulation and reality. Our recommendations address both the risks and the transformative potential of digital technologies and AI, including its implications for access to justice. Our thematic and more multi-sectoral approach reflects a simple truth. The realization of women's rights and access to justice are shaped by discrimination across all areas of life. We cannot address the justice deficits we observe without addressing equality in the family, in care systems, in the recognition of gender apartheid, and in digital transformations that are reshaping our societies. Madam Chair, Excellencies, in 1946, the first chair of the Subcommission on the Status of Women marked the historic moment that established this forum. At the same time, she warned that it would be a tragedy to spoil this unique opportunity by confusing the wish and the facts. Today, our wish is clearly stronger than ever. With the necessary political will, the facts can align with it. If our institutions are to remain credible, they must deliver change where justice is lived, in everyday realities and in the systems that shape them. The working group stands ready to support member states and all partners in translating these commitments into measurable change in the lives of women and girls globally. Thank you.
I thank the chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. I now invite the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences, Ms. Reem Al-Salem, to make a statement.
Madam Chair of the CSW, Madam Director of UN Women, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. International treaties and declarations have long highlighted the importance of women and girls accessing justice, as well as removing barriers to ensure that they can obtain reparations, protection, and accountability. Thanks to the advocacy of feminists, civil society, and victims' organizations themselves, the world has recognized the pivotal role that the effective access to justice plays in advancing sex and gender equality, ensuring non-repetition of crimes, and ultimately leading to fairer and more just societies. And while important advances have been made, the ability of women and girls to access effective justice is facing an existential crisis that we can no longer ignore. Two recent developments particularly stand out for me. First, the realization that we gained that the measures we have taken to ensure justice are grossly insufficient. I would say this has become particularly clear following the partial release of the information on the atrocities committed by the Epstein criminal enterprise. These concern the most shocking, heinous crimes that we have ever seen being committed against women and children, particularly girls. They have been committed across the globe for decades, all this while flaunting nauseating levels of impunity. These crimes may amount to crimes against humanity, and the failure of many governments to still initiate investigations into crimes for which they have jurisdiction is but one example of our collective failure to achieve justice. I dwell on this because this is just the tip of the iceberg of a wider, systematic, and disturbing trend. Second, the respect for international humanitarian law and the laws of armed conflict has sustained a damaging blow, and with it, specific protections that these laws grant civilians, particularly also women and girls. They have been eroded. There's also an increasing and alarming weaponization of sexual reproductive violence and the use of slavery and other forms of violence against women and girls as tools of war, as tools of subjugation and control, and at times as tools of genocide, as we have seen in Palestine, Sudan, Myanmar, and Afghanistan. Yes, in Afghanistan, because women and girls are intentionally being destroyed as a group for being female, it amounts to genocide. Women and girls are also amongst the first to be killed in illegal acts of aggression, as we have seen recently on Iran and long-standing attacks on Lebanon. All courts, including international ones, have the necessary tools and concepts to adopt a more sex and gender-specific lens to the crimes targeting women and girls, such as, for example, the concept the codified concept of gender persecution. These tools, however, remain grossly underutilized. Both factors I have just mentioned have one thing in common. They tell a story of absolute alarming levels of impunity and sky-high barriers to obtaining accountability, thereby cementing the message to half of society that their lives, dignity, safety, and security do not matter. I would also argue that an integral part of justice is how we remember these and past atrocities. You see, re-victimization also happens when victims are denied the opportunity to tell their stories, when processes for truth-telling and memorialization are abandoned and deprioritized, as we have seen in some parts of the world. Considering the above, I urge us, not to conduct deliberations at this year's session in a shroud of business as usual. On the contrary, we must continue to listen to the siren in the background that reminds us about the epidemic of violence against women and girls. And I close by leaving you with 3 thoughts to consider. First, given our collective concern to avoid regression in standards and rights that have been hard-won, we must also recognize that the dilution of agreed-on language and terminology that erase women, girls, and female-specific needs in law and in practice is a form of regression. Since you cannot protect what you cannot define, you cannot, by extension, advocate for the rights of a group you cannot define, including to have it access effective justice. So our attempts to deviate from agreed-on language to describe crimes that women and girls are disproportionately exposed to, under the false pretenses that women and girls can consent to their own exploitation, abuse, and loss of dignity. For example, through replacing terms like prostitution and the exploitation of prostitution of others with the term sex work that allows perpetrators of violence, buyers of sexual acts, and pimps to get away with their crimes. Second, the justice system is but a reflection of how wider societies function. If all aspects of our lives and systems are saturated with patriarchal norms, misogyny, if harmful stereotypes persist and are fermented, a model justice process will fall flat on its face. And third, we must reject and push hard against efforts by the powerful that seek to justify illegal wars of aggression and expansionist colonial projects under the fake banner of women's liberation or as some form of legitimate defense of one's own women and girls. There can never be justice in killing, starving, and raping more women and girls, no matter the cause or objective. I thank you.
I thank the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences. Excellencies, dear guests, colleagues, members of civil society, let me turn to the outcome document for this year's session. We have been engaged in an extensive negotiation process on an agreed conclusion, which has taken place over a period of 6 weeks. I'm very grateful to our co-facilitators from Liechtenstein and Rwanda for having led this process in a dedicated and professional manner and for making every effort to bring the outcome document to a successful conclusion. We have been continuing our work in intense negotiations over this weekend in order to enable the Commission to adopt agreed conclusion as it has done in the past. As a result of these consultations, I have circulated my final version of a text last night, and I trust that all delegations have received it. This text is thus the result of weeks of a collective effort, and not only the membership of this Commission, but in fact of the United Nations as a whole. And I have presented it to you as a text that I firmly believe to be the best possible basis for the Commission on Status of Women to agree on an outcome for this session. The text you have received is strong on substance, more focused and concise than outcomes that we have adopted together in past years, and as faithful to the topic to the session, access to justice for women and girls, as you have allowed it to be. I'm very grateful for the very strong and positive engagement the membership has shown, including over the weekend, and for the collective spirit to work towards an agreed outcome. And I'm confident that we can take this outcome over the line together later in the day, as we have engaged in some final consultations. In light of the communications I have received, I'm asking for the support from each and every one of you so we can adopt our document in the afternoon at meeting at 3 p.m. I invite ministers to be here at 3 p.m. when we consider the draft agreed conclusions. Many thanks. I now invite the Commission to begin the general discussion under Agenda Item 3, follow-up to the Fourth World Conference on Women and to the 23rd Special Session of the General Assembly entitled Women 2000, Gender Equality, Development and Peace for the 21st Century. Before giving the floor to the first speaker of the list, I would like to remind delegations that the list of speakers is closed. I would also like to remind speakers to kindly respect the agreed time limits of 6 minutes for delegations speaking on behalf of groups and 4 minutes for delegations speaking in their national capacity. As previously announced, the microphone will be automatically muted when the allotted time has elapsed. Delegations are invited to follow the live list of speakers in the e-speakers module of the e-delegate portal, which is also accessible on iGov. I thank you for your cooperation and understanding. I kindly request that statements be delivered at a normal speed to ensure proper interpretation. Longer versions of statements may be sent for posting to e-statements@un.org. Do you have one? I now invite His Excellency Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr., President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. It is certainly an honor to address the 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women on behalf of the people of the Philippines. We gather here to discuss what is, in truth, one of the most fundamental measures of a nation's progress, the status of its women. We often speak of development in terms of economic growth, infrastructure, technology, or trade. But there is a simpler and more human measure. How are the women doing? If women are educated, safe, able to work, able to lead, able to decide the course of their own lives, then a society is moving forward. If they are not, then no level of prosperity can truly be called progress. In the Philippines, we are proud to say that we have long believed that empowering women is not merely a matter of fairness. It is a cornerstone of nation building. Filipino women have always stood at the center of our national life, as leaders in government and business, as innovators, educators, health workers, entrepreneurs, and as a steady strength within families and communities. Their contributions continue to shape our democracy, our economy, and our national character. Our country has worked consistently to translate this belief into policy, strengthening protections for women, expanding opportunities for education and employment, and promoting women's leadership across all sectors of society. But even as we take pride in this progress, we recognize that the journey towards full equality, both in our country and around the world, is far from complete. Across many societies, women still face barriers that limit their opportunities. Too many continue to experience discrimination and violence. Too many girls are still denied the education that will allow them to shape their own futures. And that is why the work of this commission remains as vital today as it was 70 years ago. Education must remain at the center of all our efforts. When a girl is educated, the benefits extend far beyond the individual. They strengthen families, uplift communities, and expand the possibilities of entire nations. Economic empowerment is equally essential. Women must have access to employment, to finance, to entrepreneurship, and to leadership. Societies that fully include women in economic life are not only more just, they are stronger, they are more resilient. And we must remain united in confronting violence against women in all its forms. Violence erodes dignity, weakens communities, and undermines the very foundations of our justice. But beyond laws and institutions, we must also address the attitudes and assumptions that continue to limit women's roles in many parts of the world. True equality requires not only policy change, but cultural change. Excellencies, the world today faces many challenges: conflict, climate change, economic uncertainty, and rapid technological transformation. But there is one principle that remains beyond question. We cannot hope to solve the great challenges of our time if half of our humanity is excluded from shaping those solutions. Women must be present wherever decisions are made, in government, in business, in science, in diplomacy, and in peace building. The Philippines stands ready to work with all nations to advance this cause, because when women rise, societies rise with them. When women lead, nations move forward. And when every girl, no matter where she is born, can stand with confidence and say that her future is truly her own, and then we will know that we have built not only a more equal world, but a better one for all of humanity. Thank you, and mabuhay.